I was recently in a meeting about distributed problem solving and leadership. And the facilitators suggested that a problem can be like a campfire. It can bring us together, and that this is actually how we shift culture. So I would like us to think about this roundtable as a campfire. I don't think that we have a problem exactly, but I recently did a search on the ASHE database, the best source I know of, looking for certificate and degree programs with sustainability in the title at the 2-year, 4-year, master's, and PhD level. And the number I got was 2,265. Again, that's not a problem. This is a good thing, but it does represent a maturity in the field. This is a good time to assess together where we are at as an academic discipline and in the field of sustainability. So I see a few reasons to talk about this. First, this overall maturity. How do we evaluate the big picture of how we are educating the next generations? How is a prospective student to really know the difference between these different programs, or a certificate between a BA and a BS in sustainability? How is an employer to understand the value of these degrees? And also, as general education programs integrate more sustainability content, which is also a good thing, it becomes more important to distinguish the competencies gained in a sustainability degree program. It's a big task, trying to figure out what capacities generations in the future might need. It's complex work, and we've done so much. An accreditation process might help us do even better. A second thing is, as a sector, we know that higher education is in transition, not only as we reorient after the pandemic, but facing this demographic cliff, declining enrollments and consolidations, combined with increases in online learning and a workforce orientation. Sustainability is a growing workforce field, so let's be prepared to increase and diversify student enrollment in these fields, even as overall enrollments in higher ed might be decreasing. And lastly, let's think about the context of the climate crisis, what David Orr calls our planetary predicament. Some of our sustainability programs remain under-resourced, but the need and demand for these programs will only increase. So let's prepare for that. These are some of the reasons that I'm here. But as I go over the introduction or the agenda and introduce the rest of the team, I'd love to know why you're here. So if you can introduce yourself in the chat, let us know your name, your affiliation, and your role as I'm going over the agenda and introducing our team. Next slide. So today we'll do these introductions and acknowledgements. We'll provide an overview of the Pathways Toward Accreditation initiative. We'll be gathering some participant input via the Mentimeter tool. We'll have time for a breakout room discussion and some sharing back following that. And we'll close with next steps and participation. The first half of the meeting is recorded so that we can provide a summary, but the breakout rooms and the period after that are really intended as a roundtable so that we can hear from you and your thoughts and ideas on this initiative. So next slide, thanks. So again, my name is Krista Hiser. I'm the Senior Lead and Advisor for Sustainability Education for GCSE. I'm also a professor at Kapi'olani Community College, which is part of the University of Hawaii system. And my home campus, our chancellor really saw the value in this work. So I'm grateful to be granted a professional leave of absence in order to pursue this work with GCSE full time. I also worked with the University of Hawaii System Office of Sustainability, doing curricular alignment across the 10 campus system. So I'm so excited to continue doing this work with all of you. Also helping me with this roundtable today From the GCSE staff, we have Shelley Kosak. Shelley, you can wave. Shelley is our higher education liaison. She's been busy keeping track of everybody who has moved, been promoted, left the field. As you know, there's been a lot of change across the higher ed sector and within GCSE. I'm also grateful to Alex Ramey and Liz Nelson, our program associates, and without their intelligence and competence, we could not produce this roundtable today. I'm also excited to actually physically be in the room with some of what I refer to as our scholars team, Katja Brungers and Jordan King. You'll also be hearing from Ryan Jordan and Rod Parnell, and they'll be able to introduce themselves at that time. Next slide. And now at this time, I'm so pleased to invite Valerie Luzaidis, the chair of the GCSE Board of Directors, to open this roundtable discussion.
Well, thank you, Krista, and we're so glad that you're here and working with us at GCSE. So hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Valerie Luzaidis. I'm the current chair of the Board of Directors for the Global Council for Science and the Environment. You'll also hear this referenced as GCSE. I'm also Dean of the Graduate School and a professor at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse, New York, where I teach regenerative economics and a research design and methods course that is informed by justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. So I'd like to begin today with reading the Global Council's oath to be anti-racist and inclusive through sustained learning, action, and accountability. We begin each of our meetings this way. The Global Council for Science and the Environment acknowledges that regardless of one's own race or ethnicity, individuals are at various points along an anti-racist journey. As an organization, committed to becoming anti-racist and multicultural, GCSE will purposefully work to identify, discuss, and challenge issues of race, color, ethnicity, orientation, and the impacts they have on GCSE, its mission, its partner organizations, and its people. We accept this challenge as our continuous journey. We explicitly and publicly affirm our identity as an anti-racist multicultural organization. We resolve to develop and work to implement strategies that dismantle racism within all aspects of our organization and society. We commit to recognize and oppose all forms of racism, injustice, oppression, intolerance, and hate. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this GCSE-sponsored conversation on pathways to accreditation of sustainability and sustainability-related programs in higher education. We're especially excited that it is using an approach that centers justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and enhanced access. So this is a very important topic for GCSE, as you see by this oath that we are using in every day. So some of you are from GCSE member institutions and some are not. So I want to take just a minute to share a little bit about us and how this organization is uniquely situated to lead this conversation about accreditation for sustainability and sustainability-related programs. The Global Council for Science and the Environment, GCSE, is a non-governmental organization that was established in 1990, and it advances the use of science to inform environmental decision-making. The work of GCSE spans boundaries between science and decision-making to strengthen the impact of durable solutions to environmental challenges. We engage scientists, educators, policymakers, business leaders, and officials at all levels of government. And one of the primary ways we do this work is through the GCSE Alliance of Sustainability and Environmental Academic Leaders, what we call the Leaders Alliance, which brings together over 100 deans, directors, and academic leaders of environmental and sustainability departments, programs, and schools from all part of higher education, including public and private doctoral granting institutions, liberal arts colleges, community colleges, tribal colleges, HBCUs, HSIs, and international institutions. Participation in the GCSE Leaders Alliance provides a valuable peer network for academic leaders to improve quality and effectiveness of environmental and sustainability higher education programs, research, curricula, and workforce development. But it also provides input to the GCSE board and executive director to provide perspective on priorities of GCSE members and advances the quality and effectiveness of our interdisciplinary and sustainability education programs. So we do much of this work through hosting communities of practice that bring together people interested in advancing collective efforts such as this one, focusing on program level development, administration, and operation of sustainability programs in higher ed. This particular community of practice has worked together to provide guidance on learning objectives for higher ed sustainability programs while facilitating dialogue among stakeholders and collaborating with GCSE member institutions and other organizations to inform broader visions of progress in the field. And with this conversation, we're beginning an exploration of programmatic accreditation for sustainability in this broader realm. So thank you so much for being here, for your time and your participation in this work, and we're really excited to see how this initiative evolves.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate the language of GCSE's anti-racist institution oath because it lets us really recognize where we're at and where we need to be in order to see the education we need for the future we want. I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the work of Land Acknowledgements. This is a website where you can search the territories and treaties that impact your institution. And I want to acknowledge that every institution has a relationship to the indigenous people of that area. So I live way out in the blue part in Hawaii, which we acknowledge as an indigenous space where the knowledge systems of Kanaka Oiwi have shaped Hawaii in a sustainable way. And I'm grateful to live there as a settler ally. GCSE is located on the other side of the continent in Washington, DC, home to 12 tribal nations. And currently I'm in Arizona, which acknowledges 23 native nations that have inhabited this land. My point here is that, again, every university has a relationship to the indigenous peoples of their area and to the past and the present of that relationship. So tribal colleges, indigenous serving institutions, historically Black colleges and universities, and Hispanic serving institutions, as Valerie mentioned, are really vital to the conversation we're having today. So if you have an action, an oath, or an acknowledgement that you feel moved to share at this time, you can also add that in the chat. I think it's really informative to see the ways that every institution is navigating these relationships. And we can also just take a moment to take a breath or look out the window and be wherever you are today. Next slide. This is the GCSE logo, and the blue orb symbolizes our common planet, which is the subject of the environmental mission of GCSE. The nodes and connection points in the logo represent our diverse membership and community and the collaborative nature of our work and leadership. It was designed in 2017 by Rob Vance and Sumeda Rao. It also works well, I think, to show how the components of this initiative go together. So next slide. So we're going to begin kind of from a backwards design. The goal is to design a program accreditation for sustainability and sustainability related programs, and to do so in a way that centers justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. The components that we're going to be sharing today include many ways to participate. We're forming a high-level sustainability leadership advisory council to provide input on this program. Valerie already mentioned the GCSE Sustainability Education Community of Practice, and this conversation really began in that community of practice, which has been talking about this for several years. We'll be holding periodic roundtables like this one, where we can interact with different communities across higher education, and a quarterly newsletter, and a lot of information, which will be on our new website redesign. The other components are the key competencies in sustainability statement, which Katja will share in a moment, and a professional development course, which will be hosted at Arizona State University to support program directors and faculty in engaging with the key competencies and completing the self-study type of work for a program accreditation. That's what we're going over today. This involves a lot of different stakeholders. Students and employers are the first who come to my mind, but our communities, faculty, instructional designers, and administrators. And I would have liked on this slide to use a picture of people planting trees on campus and doing work in the community. But let's face it, this is administrative work. This is Google Docs and matrices and documents and reports and data. And this is what we do as program directors and faculty in sustainability programs. So let's do that work in a way that can help to improve these programs. Thanks. Next slide. So it's time for our first Mentimeter. If you haven't used this tool before, there's two ways to do it. You can use the phone on your camera and take a picture of the QR code, and that will give you a little yellow signal to tap and open the Mentimeter website. Or you can open a second browser and go to menti.com and use the code 44162726. If you're on your phone and this is not possible, that is no problem. You can also input your comments in the chat. Ready? We have a practice question. The practice question is, what state or country are you from? Okay, everybody got the hang of it? Great. So this gives you, if you don't have the hang of it, that's okay. Just put your comments in the chat. And let's try the next Mentimeter question. So the question is, what comes to your mind about how accreditation could benefit your sustainability program? You can use a short phrase, and you can enter 1, 2, or 3 things that come to your mind. How could accreditation benefit your program? Increased visibility. I see coordination and cooperation, raising visibility, strategic direction, connect to employers. In the chat, I see accountability and rigor. Thank you. Student enrollments, future careers. In the chat, I see raising visibility. Thank you. Standardization, collaboration, transfer, visibility. So that's the biggest word I see in the word cloud. A lot of ideas come up. Obviously, this is something that you've thought about before, that we've talked about before on our different campuses and our different locations. This is just our first time really talking about it together. So next slide. Let's look at the flip side. What barriers or challenges do you foresee if there's a program accreditation for sustainability programs? Does it cost money? Does it feel like an imposition? knowledge, having the knowledge to do it, the expertise, looking for barriers and challenges, a loss of creativity and local adaptation. Thank you, Peggy. Time. I see time is the biggest word there. K through 12 understanding. That's a great point. Crossing academic lines. That's a really great point. Getting buy-in, faculty associations, hassle. Thank you. Thank you. It's really great to see kind of both sides of what comes up when we talk about this topic. So thanks for those responses. Now I'm going to turn it over to Katja.
Yes, and I appreciate that we ended on the barriers and challenges, because with the next slide, you see that we have a real opportunity here to think about conventional processes towards accreditation and the kind of generic steps that are indicated by the US Department of Education, and how we can rethink and reframe those steps to make them fit an accreditation of sustainability programs or sustainability related programs. So with the green circles, we wanted to indicate that we can rethink the steps of self-study, on-site evaluation, etc., through principles of sustainability, what that means to us. And we can co-create the design of those steps. And equally, we can integrate principles of justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as we think about who is going to co-create the process, who is going to do the accreditation, who is being involved, and how do we address the challenges that you were just mentioning. The blue circles indicates the standards, and that's referring to what is being accredited within a program. And here we propose we could draw on the shared framework of key competencies in sustainability, as it provides a framework for learning objectives. And that already leads us to our next component. And I just continue addressing this together with Jordan. Next slide, please. As we think about solving complex sustainability problems, we can think about how we enter them. And one way of entering this process is to analyze a complex problem, how it's looking today and the process and its history. And here we employ a variety of elements from systems thinking competency. And then we can look into the future and explore what would happen if we do nothing, and what would the world look like in that situation. And we can simultaneously also think about what would the future look like that we want? What would the sustainability vision look like? And here we employ futures thinking competencies in these two steps. As we think from how do we get from where we are today to the desired sustainability vision, avoiding the potential undesired non-intervention scenarios, we develop sustainability transition strategies, applying strategic thinking competency. And then in all of these steps, we obviously engage with values, because we want to map, to specify sustainability and other values, and also reconcile potentially conventional values with sustainability values. And this frames the problem, this frames the vision, the sustainability vision, and it informs inclusive sustainability transition strategies. So we employ values thinking competence in all of those steps, and it's an iterative process. Another element that we employ in all of these steps is that we work with others. We want to be inclusive, and we need skills in creating collaboration and co-production of knowledge. And as we see now these steps and the associated competences, we also understand how they need to be connected to each other in order to really work through a problem-solving process. And that then helps us think about what does integrated problem-solving competency actually mean. And even if we go through all those steps and we bring the best of our competences to the fore, what we develop through that process is a thought product. It's a proposal for a solution, a sustainability solution on paper. So next was proposed that we need actually 2 additional competencies to move a proposed solution into a lived experience on the ground. And that is the implementation competency, or the competency to translate things into action. And this then connects to individuals and their inner sustainability, and speaks to the interpersonal competency, or also mindset. So here you see the framework of the 8 proposed key competencies and how they can be connected with each other as we move through the steps of the sustainability problem-solving process. The last point I say here is I started with analyzing the problem. That's one way of entering a sustainability solution process, but we can also enter from the desired vision and then backcast from there how we work towards that future. And with this, I hand it over to Jordan, who tells us what we're going to do next.
Thanks, Katja. And so this framework that we just described and the work we've been doing on it is not only helpful for describing how we solve sustainability problems, but also for how we design and evaluate sustainability and sustainability-related programs in higher education. So building from our work on this topic and a wealth of literature and practice around it in the past decade or so, we're moving towards a proposal statement on the key competencies in sustainability, which we will have a public commenting process on in order to receive input from members of the GCSE broad community and stakeholders related to sustainability programs in higher education. This process will take place around December or January, and really there's 2 goals on our ends, which are to better understand this convergence around these key competencies and sustainability framework, but also how practitioners like yourselves are using this on a program level to help design learning objectives, to evaluate them, and to better understand what it looks like for a student to become a sustainability professional. So we hope that this input process will shape this statement in a way that makes it not only valuable for you, but also helps give further guidance for our field in general. Next slide, please. And so we'd like to ask and begin this process of receiving a little bit of input from yourselves more informally by seeing how you potentially engage with this key competencies and sustainability framework or some of the ideas behind it. It could be using it to outline program level learning objectives. Maybe you engage with some of these in your class that you teach. So I'd love to hear how you are engaging with this framework and the different key competencies in sustainability. So please join the Mentimeter and provide your thoughts.
So this is a harder question. It's an open-ended response. And yeah, I don't know is a good response. I'm not using it yet. That's a good response. Using the key competencies framework in classes. Yes. My program doesn't engage with them so far, but there is a need for different competencies broadly. Interesting point about liberal arts faculty who have little expertise in doing sustainability actions. That's a great example of where there might be some helpful professional development that could be provided as part of this process. Using the key competencies to guide pedagogy, yes. Being a nonprofit educational organization, a resource to develop key competencies, great. The recent National Academies report really highlighted that it would be helpful to the field to have a shared reference framework of key competencies. So this is really kind of illustrating that and showing just where we're at in familiarity with this key competencies framework. Great. Thank you for those responses. That was a hard question. We're collecting all of this information and we're going to talk about it in just a minute. We have one more component that we just wanted to introduce today really briefly. You can go to the next slide about creating some professional development to accompany this process. Maybe initially for, you can go to the next slide, Alex, thanks. Maybe initially for program directors who are designing programs, certificates, degree programs, and evaluating programs and degrees. We are envisioning a professional development course offered through Arizona State University that could be synchronous and asynchronous, kind of provide a supportive cohort and some connections for the field to work together through some of these processes. And I'd like to introduce Ryan Johnson to just share a few of the brainstorms that we've been talking about towards developing such a course. Ryan?
Thank you, Krista. Great to see everyone here today. I am Ryan Johnson. I lead the executive and professional education programs at ASU's College of Global Futures, which includes the School of Sustainability. And I spent more than a decade at a professional society that had 5 certifications. So I have a bit of experience here, including with mid-career adult learners in professional development. So let's go to the next slide. And this again is just fuel for thought for when we get into the meat of the program, the second half here, which is getting into breakouts and really understanding your wants, your desires, and your thoughts on this. So as Krista mentioned, we're considering a number of different ways that we could do professional development related to this goal of eventually creating an accreditation. So we're interested in these breakouts and in other feedback for your thoughts on how we might do that. What would be attractive to you? We believe that building a cohort, a community of practice through a professional development course would be valuable for those who participate and for the development of the accreditation. So we'd like to have your point of view on whether you think that would be valuable to have a cohort. We could also create obviously something asynchronous that you could do on your own time and in your own way. So the first 3 sort of pillars in this course could be what you see in the middle of the screen here, setting up some foundations, perhaps about sustainability programs in higher education, the key competencies that Jordan and Katja just covered. And then the third section could be the application. And the size of those color bars don't have any reflection here. They're just simply filling the words. So we're not saying that center section would be the largest third, although it might be. And then of course, undergirding all of this would be, as we've talked about earlier, with the land acknowledgement and the diversity, equity, inclusion, infusing diverse perspectives into all of this. And then, of course, it was already mentioned, I believe, through the Mentimeter, place-based strategies. So we know there are unique circumstances and situations within unique areas, and we'd like, of course, to reflect that as well. So all of this is simply fuel for thought for your contributions through the Mentimeter or through the breakouts, which are going to commence shortly. And I think, Krista, if I'm not mistaken, about 20 minutes of breakout.
Maybe a little less, but a nice chunk of time. And yes, we're going to do that next. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we have a Mentimeter here. Let's just take a minute for this one. Again, it's a little bit harder question and something that I think is good to talk about in the breakout room. But I am curious just what is top of mind for you with this idea of professional development for program directors, for faculty in your program, or for administrators in order to create this accreditation process. Yeah, getting a broad common overview.
We also have in the chat.
Oh, some in the chat?
Yeah, in the chat, somebody mentioned having a cohort for an ongoing reflection with colleagues who do similar work at different institutions is a foundation of some of you here in the group. And that would be something that is essential for this work. So thank you for that comment. And also in the chat, addressing the skill gaps for future climate resilience is another topic recommended.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this starts to get really interesting and exciting, doesn't it? When we think about how we could do this as a cohort, how different institutions, perhaps in a region, could work together to to evaluate each other's programs, how we could share ideas and resources and sort of up-level all of our programs. I see in the chat a cohort would be very valuable. Thank you for that. I love that. These are great suggestions. Good job with the Mentimeter. Let this go for a couple more seconds. Capstone courses.
Help with admin buying, also very important. Yeah.
Undergraduate student career professional development. Interesting. Yeah, it's also quickly becomes very big. So I appreciate all of this information. Great. Let's take this discussion next into the breakout rooms. Alex, can we just give Alex a hand for managing the Mentimeter and the slides at the same time? She's amazing. Thank you. And thank you for those responses. I think we have one more slide that's just kind of a recap of the questions that we asked in the Mentimeter. Question in the chat, will we make these Mentimeter results available? Yes, you will receive a summary document with this recording that will synthesize the Mentimeter comments as well as notes from the breakout room.